So let's do a little recap. We're talking about logical fallacies, right? So what is a fallacy? Hey, don't get distracted by the dog. Pay attention.
I know, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. If you don't pet him, he goes away.
I know what a fallacy is.
That's like a
Ella, what is a fallacy?
Statements that might sound reasonable or true at first, but are actually flawed / dishonest.
Yeah.
Right from
Nice.
the brain.
Okay, good. All right. Hey,
I'm sorry.
do we need to separate you and the dog?
I know, Dakota.
No, it's not Dakota's fault.
It is a little.
So we'll see if our children have the maturity to pay attention. All right. So what are the 3 logical fallacies we looked at last week?
Really?
Who said that?
Me.
Ad hominem. Great, sir. What does it mean?
It's like saying. Wait, I have it in my head. It's not there.
Ew.
Alicia.
Is that the one where you attack people based off their looks?
You can, yeah. It's attacking the person rather than the argument. So it can be name calling, talking like making fun of their appearance, stuff like that. Good. Malika, what's another one? Genetic fallacy. Great. What's that?
Oh, you want me to?
No, I got it right off the dome. It's
Right off the dome.
it's talking about it's not true because of somewhere where they came from.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
it's like what you were just talking about with California, that
That was
like the road rage incident that they said it's like you're stupid because you're from California.
Yeah.
Which is not true.
Yeah. For sure. Wait.
Well,
It's true that I'm from California. Is it true that I'm stupid? Okay.
I don't know. But
Good. What's the 3rd fallacy?
Appeal to force. When someone uses force or threat of force to convince someone or the other person to
Yeah, good. So instead of, again, attacking the argument, you threaten or even use violence, or you could just threaten someone. And it doesn't have to just be physical violence. It could be you're at a job and maybe you bring up something that a coworker did that was immoral, and instead of correcting it or addressing it, your boss threatens to fire you. You know, that's like an appeal to force. I'm going to threaten to do this to you rather than address the actual argument. Okay. So why are we doing this study? Proverbs 15:28. Someone read it. Whoever's got it, go. Go.
The 28.
Yeah.
And the heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil.
Okay. The heart of the righteous person, they ponder, they think, they study, maybe your translation says, how to answer. And so that's why we're doing this study. One of the reasons is to teach you, to equip you to be able to answer bad arguments. Okay, to recognize logical fallacies when other people commit it, but what's the second reason? You need to guard against committing them yourself, okay? All of us commit logical fallacies, and we need to be careful that we don't use those in our own arguments, okay? So, I asked the Lord to stop time for us tonight so we could try to get through all 5 of these next fallacies, but we'll see if He answers our prayer. All right, you guys ready for it?
Yes.
So we have appeal to pity. Here's our next logical fallacy. So appeal to pity is where, you can look up on the screen, a person resorts to an emotional appeal trying to use sympathy or guilt on a person to get them to accept a certain conclusion instead of using a logical argument with relevant evidence. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'll give you an example. Last Wednesday here at Youth Group, we celebrated whose birthday?
Maya.
Maya's birthday, right? And her mom brought this fantastic cake, and there was only one piece left, and neither Eric nor Robbie had a piece of cake yet. And so Eric says to Robbie, "Can I have the last piece of cake? You know how much I love cake, and it's been a tough day for me. I've had such a bad day, and this cake would just make me feel so much better. You don't want me to be sad, right, Robbie? Okay. Do you see how this is an appeal to pity or appeal to emotion, right? Rather than make a good argument, this didn't really happen. Or maybe it did it?
Maybe it happened.
Okay. So instead of using a good logical argument for something, you're just trying to like pull on someone's heartstrings and make them feel bad, right? Either their sympathy or try to guilt trip them into something. So I used to be a high school teacher, and I saw my students do this all the time, okay? So basically, like a student wouldn't study for a test, they'd end up bombing the test, and then they'd come to me and say, Mr. Mack, please, you have to let me retake the test. You can't let me fail it. You got to let me retake it, because if I get an F on the test, my parents will kill me. I'm like, well, I'll see you in heaven. What are they appealing to? Yeah, they're not giving me actually a good logical argument. They're just trying to appeal to, you have to give me grace. Or, I'm sure none of you guys ever do this, but when the end of the semester would come around, guess who else would come around? All the slackers, okay? And all the people who wouldn't work, do their stuff during the semester, they'd come up and be like, Mr. Mack, please, can I have extended time to turn in this assignment that was due like 3 months ago? If you don't, you got to give me grace, because my car broke down, which made me late for work, and since I was late for work, my boss fired me, and on top of that, my dog died, and you got to cut me some slack. You have to give me grace. Don't you care about me? What are they appealing to? Pity, right? It was always like especially enjoyable when I'd catch them cheating on something, either a test or like plagiarizing, and then I'd call them aside, sit one-on-one right in front of them, and like, you want to tell me something? And you could see like the red in their cheeks start to come around. They're like, no. And then you'd see like a little tear start rolling up in their eye. Be like, okay, fine. So I'll tell you what you did since you won't. And then I'd tell them, and they're like, so I'd ask, why'd you do it? Well, life's just been so hard lately, and a little trickle. And anyway, so appeal to emotion. What? What?
We kept trying to play this.
I'll put it up later.
No.
Hey, the Lord is not going to stop time if you need time. He's only going to do it for me. Oh my gosh. All right. So, yes, Autumn, hurry up.
I have an example of
Yeah,
that.
give me one.
Science is a little hard, so I get like B's on certain tests, but Monday, my phone went off, and I went to in the middle of the test, I went to turn it off, and some kid, I don't even know who this kid is, but they saw me on my phone and tattled on me because I was turning off a call. I was not cheating, I promise. I was turning off my phone and put it back in my bag. But this morning he came up, because I actually did well in the test for once, so he came up to me and he was like, Autumn, do you want to tell me something? And I said, not really. And then, I told him what happened, and he believed me, because that kid kind of has an F in the class, so he believed me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Yes.
What study? What did you teach as a teacher?
Tons of stuff. Okay. So, how to detect this fallacy? How to detect it? Pay attention for phrases that when people say things like, if you really care, and then they, say something else, right? Or if they say something like, if you're human, then you'll give to this cause or this charity. Or they'll say something like, if you have a heart, you guys ever see this in like social media, whether it's in ads or like someone reposts something like, if you have a soul, then you'll do this, you'll donate to this or to that, okay? It's an appeal to pity, right? So here's a couple examples for you. You guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Oh man, here we go. I've had this
Let me guess,
disgusting
Star Wars?
song stuck in my head for an entire week. This is just for you guys. Ready? This is a commercial.
just found the true hearts in here. Just saying, I'm gonna pray for y'all.
Okay. Get ready for it.
Hi, I'm Sarah McLaughlin. Will you be an angel for a helpless animal? Every day, innocent animals are abused, beaten, and neglected, and they're crying out for help. Please, call the number on your screen and join the BC SPCA with a monthly gift right now.
I hope that song gets stuck in your head for the next week like it has to be. All right. What's the appeal to? What does she ask?
If you're an angel.
Will you be an angel and do this? Now, listen. Think about it. What's the implication if you don't?
You're not a
Demon.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So, they're really good at stuff like this. Using the really sad music to tug on the heartstrings. Try to find the saddest looking dog faces, like the dogs are depressed or something. It also commits another logical fallacy that we'll talk about next week. Yeah.
So, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question. Like, is there anything wrong, though, with the feeling state, or is it just that it's not good reasoning? 'Cause it's very
good question.
effective, so is it actually morally wrong? We do that in the church, too.
It's effective. That doesn't mean it's always right. So, are there times that you can mention something in a way that tries to help people be compassionate? Sure, right. But it's more so like if I present a claim or an argument or something, and you respond by, like, let's say when I was a teacher, right? If you fail this test because you didn't study, well, then that's on you and you have enough. Rather than address that claim, that argument, you just appeal to pity instead. Does that make sense? So Publix ads are really good at this. So you guys ever watch Publix commercials? They're really good at, like, let's just watch this one. Okay?
Someone better
So-
not die. You can't say that.
Quiet.
Really wish I could be there this year.
We're gonna miss you too. We all understand.
Yeah, I should probably get going.
I love you too, sweetie. So are you going to see Grandma?
No, they're all but my parents. I'll see you tomorrow. Anybody know where the calendar is? Hey, Mom. I almost forgot. Wish everyone happy holidays.
Of course I will.
Publix, where shopping is a pleasure.
What does that have to do with shopping at Publix? Nothing. By the way, shopping at Publix is not a pleasure because it's so expensive. It's insane. Anyway. All right. Next argument. Or next logical fallacy. Argument to the people. Okay, this is where, right fast, Ella. This is where someone uses an appeal to popular assent or popular opinion, often by stirring up the feelings or excitement of the multitude. Pay attention, Alicia. You need to move. Go move somewhere else. To the multitude rather than by making a valid argument. Now listen, guys, remember, it continually goes back to, I was kind of kidding, but pay attention. Don't just take the dog with you. Let go of it. The continual thing here is they're not actually addressing the argument. Okay? Make sense? Shh, guys, pay attention. So, this can take different forms. There's different variations of this fallacy. So, for example, there's what's called the bandwagon. All right? So, bandwagon is where basically you argue that a belief or action is right because the majority of people say it is, or the majority of people believe it is, okay? So for example, all right, we got Seabass and Max. Let's say Seabass tells Max, hey, Messi's the greatest soccer player in the world. And Max is like,
Who's gonna agree?
Yeah.
Max is like, I don't think so. And Seabass is like, dude, everyone in the world says that Messi's the best player in the world,
That's
so
not true.
he's the best player. Okay? What is Seabass appealing to? Bandwagon, right? It's just everyone says it, therefore it's true, right? So that's the bandwagon. Then you have the second, another form is called elitism. All right, so elitism is basically where you argue that only the best or the smartest, the most intellectual, or the best in some form believe a certain claim or do a certain thing. All right, so for example, like if someone says, hey, only smart, enlightened people, don't believe in religion. Okay, does that make sense? They're appealing to like, oh, okay, only the elite do this. Now the reverse, there's a reverse of that, where also elitism, but where someone says, basically, hey, no sane, no intelligent person believes that Jesus really rose from the dead. Okay, now think about it. That's elitism, right? Where basically, what's the hidden implication in there?
You're stupid if you believe Jesus rose from the dead.
Exactly. If you do believe Jesus rose from the dead, you're insane and you're not intelligent. Okay? You get that? And then you also have a third one, appeal to tradition. Okay, so appeal to tradition is basically where you say that a certain belief or action is good or right because people have always done it. People have always believed it, people have always practiced it, so therefore it's good. Okay? So, but see, here's the thing. One of the problems with that is, are there all kinds of beliefs and practices that a lot of people have had in history that are actually not good?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, so just because people have maybe believed a certain way or done a certain thing for a long time, that doesn't make it good, right? And the vice versa is also true. Just because a certain belief or practice is old, that doesn't mean that it's not good anymore. Okay? So, I mean, think of our biblical morals. Are they ancient?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that mean they're outdated and not good anymore?
No.
Well, no. You know, one of the 10 Commandments is don't murder. That's still a good law to abide by today. Yeah.
But is argument to people not, like, you can still use it, right? Like, I mean, obviously we've had good change using argument to the people, like protesting and stuff like that, especially during the civil rights movement, stuff like that. Like MLK used appeal to the people. He had a valid argument, but he also used an argument to the people. So that's
So argument to the people is where basically you say this belief or this action is good or bad, depending on what you're talking about. Not giving like a good argument for why, but saying because everyone says it is. So just because everyone says something's good or bad, that doesn't make it good or bad, right? So I'll mention a good quote in just a minute to kind of explain that. But so here's a video for you guys. This guy on the left is a Catholic conservative. His name is Michael Knowles. And he's sitting in a room surrounded by, I think, 20 or 25 LGBT people and debating them on different LGBT issues, okay? And so he's debating. So this guy right here is a gay man, and he's talking to him. They're having a really nice civil discussion. They're very respectful to each other, which is nice to see. And so basically, the issue the two of them right now are debating is whether gay marriage is legit and if it should exist in our society. So I want you guys to see if you could detect which of the three versions of argument to the people is committed here, okay? Pay close attention.
My point is, the majority of people in society are okay with these things. And society's laws should reflect what the majority of people are okay with.
The majority of people were okay with slavery for much of the 19th century. So should society's laws just reflect that?
Okay. You guys see the fallacy? Josiah?
Bandwagon.
Yes, bandwagon. Good. Okay. the gay guy's jumping on the bandwagon of, did you catch what he said? The majority of society says that this is okay, therefore it's okay. But again, Michael Knowles gives a really excellent response of, just because the majority says something is good doesn't make it good. And the first half of the 19th century in America is a really good example that he brought up the issue of slavery, okay? So let me give you a few other examples to see if you could detect which of the three versions it is, all right? Here we go. Here's just a couple statements. So if someone says, hey, 85% of people at my school are buying iPhones instead of Androids, good choice. All these people can't be wrong, therefore iPhones must be better than Androids. Is that a logical fallacy or a good argument? It's a logical fallacy. Which one? Bandwagon, okay? Just because the majority is doing it doesn't make, it's not a good reason to do it, okay? It's like, hey, everyone's jumping off the bridge, so I guess I should too. You know, like, all right? How about this one? Our church has sung out of this same hymn book for over 50 years. Why should we change it now? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Appeal to tradition, okay? So think about it, guys. Just because the church, or maybe a specific church, has done this or believed that for X amount of years, that alone is not a good reason for why we should or shouldn't continue doing that. Okay? By the way, just as a little side note on that, people at one point said the same thing about the hymns. The hymns at one point were new songs in the church. And there were people, when a new hymn would come out, oh, we've always done these older ones, we don't need new ones. Okay? So it's interesting how people do this. In fact, this actually brings up another logical fallacy. You guys could jot it down. It's called argument because of age. Argument because of age. So in other words, just because a truth claim is old or ancient, that doesn't make it untrue or outdated, right? So for example, does the Bible say that sexual immorality, let's say sex before marriage, does the Bible say that that's wrong? Yes. Okay, so just because that was written thousands of years ago, does that mean it's outdated and no longer true? No, because that's not how truth works. Also, the opposite is true. Just because a certain view or belief or idea is new, that doesn't make it good or bad necessarily, right? It doesn't make it less true. There's some people who say, well, I only believe ideas or beliefs from ancient times. Well, there's like, let's say, contemporary worship songs. We sang Holy Forever. That's an amazing worship song, right? And it's newer. Just because it's new doesn't make it less true or less good than something ancient, okay? So keep that in mind. How about this one? Everybody in South Florida drives at least 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. Everybody does it, so it's not really that big of a deal.
That's true.
Is that a good argument or is that a logical fallacy?
It's a great argument.
What?
It's a great argument.
What is it? Zach? Peter?
Well, I was actually going to say you could use that argument for the flow of traffic. So, like, technically, that takes precedent.
Okay, but the actual speed limit,
It's more
if a cop pulls you over for going 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, does he have a reason to pull you over? Technically, you're breaking the law. I got a speeding ticket in the Netherlands. This is one reason I'm proud to be an American. I got a $75 speeding ticket for driving 2.5 miles per hour over the speed limit. How stupid is that? Anyways, listen. Just because everyone's doing it doesn't make it right. That's not a good argument. I got to come up with a different argument, like, you know, if there's another law that says go the flow of traffic, that's a better argument rather than, hey, everyone does it. It's like, hey, everybody lies, so it's not really that bad. Does that mean it's not bad just because everyone does it?
See?
Yeah.
I think it's just important that everyone remembers that what Jay is saying is that the argument the person is making is not a good argument. That doesn't mean what they're arguing for might not be, like, it might be correct.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the question of, like, should you give to charities that save animals? Like, the answer might be, yeah, that's a great thing to give towards, but if you were wanting to give a really reasoned argument, you nice person. Like, that's what he's saying. So he's encouraging you to actually make good arguments for things. Like if you're trying to make an argument that it's okay to drive 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, everybody's doing it is not a good reason.
Right.
That's the point.
Make an actually good argument, not everyone's doing it. Okay, how about this one?
Not everyone is doing it.
The vast majority of scientists believe in evolution. Therefore, evolution must be the correct model of origins.
No.
Which one?
Elitism.
This could kind of be bandwagon or elitism. Okay? Again, the vast majority, so you're appealing to the majority, but also it could in some sense be like, okay, professionals, right, the experts, the scientists believe this, so therefore, you're appealing to the experts' elitism, right? I really like how Norman Geisler, he's in heaven now, but he was a Christian theologian and apologist and philosopher. He said this: when did reality become a democracy? I want you to think about that. When did reality become a democracy? Do you understand what he's saying by that? Since when is truth dependent on everyone's vote? Right? God's truth is true no matter if everyone votes the opposite. And we see that in our country, right? There's this whole, hey, the majority or this percentage says that murdering a child in the womb is okay, so therefore it must be okay. Well, hold on a second. Just because the majority says this or that is okay or this or that is bad, that doesn't make it so. Right? You need to come up with a better argument, okay? What is true and real is not dependent on what the majority believes. Okay? With me on that? So here's an example of Richard Dawkins, is a famous atheist. I showed you guys this video a few weeks ago, but I'm going to show it again. It's very short. But he's in a high school. He's British, so he's in England teaching at a high school about evolution. Listen to what he says. See if you can detect which variation of the argument to the people he uses.
And there are some very respectable scientists who are religious. And I say respectable scientists, they of course believe in evolution, because all respectable scientists do believe in evolution. But they also believe in God.
Okay, catch it?
What?
Yeah, elitism. Did you catch what he said? All respectable scientists believe in what? Right. So what's the hidden implication? If you don't believe in evolution and you're a scientist, then you're not a respectable one. You don't deserve respect. Okay, that's the idea. So only the elite, only the best, only the most intellectual, the smartest scientists believe in evolution. Here's a quote from his book, The God Delusion. So I have this book, and so in the context of what he's talking about is basically the Bible telling us how the world came into existence. Okay, and basically how evidence that we have today can support the Bible's claims about the Earth's history. So see if you could spot which version he uses. Check it out. He says, the implication that the scriptures, talking about the Bible, provide a literal account of geological history, he's talking about the Earth's beginning, would make any reputable theologian wince. Do you get what he's saying there? In essence, to reform or kind of structure what he says, he's saying anyone, like, to imply that the Bible gives an actual good understanding of how the earth came into existence and whatnot would make any, what kind of theologian? Reputable theologian wince, like, ugh. Okay, so what is he saying? Which logical fallacy, which version of argument to the people? Elitism. Okay? Again, if you don't hold to what he says, you're not reputable. You're not trustworthy. So there's a couple other versions of this fallacy. Like, okay, so we have bandwagon, right? We have, what's the other one? Elitism. Appeal to tradition. There's a couple others. There's patriotism. So this is where basically, like, whatever country you're from, you appeal to that rather than making a good argument. So someone could say something like, all true Americans will volunteer to fight if, our country goes to war. So you're appealing to, it's patriotism. Like if you don't choose to fight if our country goes to war, then you're not a true American. Okay? You see the logical fallacy there? Rather than making a good argument, you're just appealing to that. And then there's another one, what's called pietism. This is kind of like morality. So basically it's like if someone says, hey, someone needs to explain to David Sappin that Christians don't watch PG movies. We only watch G movies. Okay? You know, like you're appealing to the, not like holier than thou, but like we're more moral than you are. You know, or like, hey, only people that really care about the environment drive Teslas. Okay? It's like, ooh, okay, well, you're really cool. All right, so here's another logical fallacy. Appeal to false authority. Appeal to false authority. This is where, you can see up on the screen right fast, Ella. When you appeal to an improper authority, like a public figure or a celebrity, rather than like an expert in that actual field. Okay, I'm going to explain the details. Okay, you can also refer to an authority who's acting outside of his or her expertise. Okay, so let me give you an example. And I'm going to explain more because there's more to this. Because it doesn't always just have to be a false authority. Okay, sometimes appealing to an authority is legit and it's good. And sometimes we should. But there's times when it becomes a logical fallacy, and I'm going to explain how. All right, so but here's an example. Someone says, from now on, I'm only drinking water infused with cucumber juice with drops of chlorine because Taylor Swift said it's good for you. So, is Taylor Swift a good medical health expert to quote for that kind of an argument? No. Okay. Maybe she could be considered an expert in like performance and singing. I mean, that's subject to debate. But anyways, you get the point? When we're talking about like what's healthy for the human body, it doesn't mean she can never say anything that's true, right? But if your whole reason for saying you should do this is because someone who isn't even a health expert says it, that's where it becomes kind of debatable. So again, it doesn't always have to be a false authority per se. Sometimes you could commit this fallacy by appealing to someone who is an actual authority in that field. So let me explain. Because authorities, experts in a certain field, can they be wrong? Yeah. For sure, and they often are wrong. By the way, there's very often times where two experts in one field disagree, right? So which one do you believe? The point is this, okay? Here's the major point. Because sometimes it's okay to appeal to an authority, but here's the point. This fallacy, you're substituting evidence and an actual good argument for just saying something like, well, this authority says it, so it's true. Do you get the point? Just because an authoritative figure or an expert in that field says it's true, that doesn't make it true. You can mention what they say, but also include, if you can, good evidence and a good argument for it. So that's the point of this argument. It's not that you can't ever appeal to an authority, it's that you're only appealing to them and ignoring or not even looking for evidence or a good argument. Okay, you don't even try to make a good argument. All you say is, they said it, so it's true. Okay, so here's kind of an example. This is in a commercial from way back in the day, back when it was still black and white, but listen to this ad.
You know, if you were to follow a busy doctor as he makes his daily round of calls, you would find yourself having a mighty busy time keeping up with him. Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose. In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Why not change to Camels for the next 30 days? and see what a difference it makes in your smoking enjoyment. See how camels agree with your throat. See how mild and good tasting a cigarette can be.
Okay. Yeah. See how nice the cigarette smoke is with your throat. Crazy. But do you guys see some of the problems here? Now, doctors are supposed to be health experts, right? And it's interesting that they use doctors as kind of the go-to for this specific brand of cigarette. Now, it's interesting. They kind of appealed to a popular survey, which can in some ways maybe be an argument to the people, but think about what they're really appealing to. Well, the authority on this says this. Doctors, the health experts, they say this. So Camels must be, like, this is why you should have Camel cigarettes, because the health experts do it, okay? Again, here's the key, guys. We should believe in authority, because sometimes, again, we can appeal to an authority, an expert on something. The key is this. Are you listening? Are you ready for it? We should believe in authority on something if we have good reason to. Not just because they said it's true, okay? So that's the key. Don't shut off your brain. Don't stop thinking critically just because an expert says something. Examine what they say. I tell you guys to do this all the time. When I teach you the Bible, do I tell you, hey, just believe what I say? Do I ever tell you, hey, just believe me? No. What do I tell you guys to do?
Take it into scripture and see if
You need to take it to scripture and make sure what I say is true, right? So just because I tell you the Bible means this or the Bible says that, doesn't mean you should just believe what I say. Okay, you should, and you shouldn't go tell someone, hey, this is what this Bible verse means because Jay said it. Well, can I be wrong?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. So you could say, you know, Jay, who has studied the Bible for years and has a degree in all this stuff, has studied the original language, he in his study has come to this conclusion. So that's part of my argument, but also there's this other evidence here as well. Okay, do you see the difference? Versus, hey, believe this because Jay said it's true. Richard Dawkins, remember this atheist? He's a really good example of an expert, an authority in a certain field overstepping his bounds into another field. So, for example, his book, The God Delusion, he does this quite a lot. He has a couple degrees in zoology. That's his field of expertise, zoology. And yet the entire real premise of and like the content of the God Delusion book, he's acting like he's an expert in theology and philosophy. Okay, and really it's quite amazing because he shows his glaring ignorance of these two fields in his book. In fact, check this out. I'm going to read you a quote. A famous atheist philosopher of science named Michael Ruse, he said this: the God Delusion, the book, the God Delusion makes me embarrassed to be an atheist. Mm-hmm. And he goes on and says, Dawkins in the God Delusion would fail any introductory philosophy or religion course. So this atheist read the book and he said, dude, Dawkins is way out of his league here. Like, atheists should not appeal to Dawkins's book as an authority when it comes to religion, theology, philosophy, because Dawkins doesn't know what he's talking about. In essence, is what the guy is saying. Does that make sense? All right, let's do just a couple more. Here's another logical fallacy called argument from adverse consequences. This is where you say that an argument or a claim, it has to be false because the implications of it being true would just have really negative consequences. Okay? So, hey, I can't believe that what you're telling me is true, because if it was, man, that would just not be enjoyable. That would have bad consequences for my life. The world would be a worse place, so on and so forth. Here's kind of an example. If someone says to you, hey, I refuse to believe all the evidence that my spouse was unfaithful to me because if it was true, it would ruin my family. Okay, is that a good reason to not believe it? No. Okay, now, of course, it can ruin your family, which is horrible, but that's not a good reason not to believe something. Do you get the point? So I'll give you a couple examples. I'll give you a few more examples. Here you go. This is from the Avengers Endgame, when they're kind of coming up with their new plan. Are you ready for it?
This is good work, Steve.
I know it is. Because I don't know what I'm going to do if it doesn't.
Okay. Not only is this one of the dumbest lines in all of cinematic history, because it literally makes no sense, but it also commits the logical fallacy of the adverse consequences. What is Steve Rogers saying? Hey, the plan is going to work because the implications of it not working, it's too much to bear. I can't think about it. So it's going to work. Well, but guys, that's not how reality works. You could be hopeful that it works, but you can't just be like, this is how it is, because if it isn't, that would just really be horrible. Okay? Now, some atheists commit this fallacy when it comes to Christianity. They don't believe that God exists because they say if he did exist, man, that would be horrible, because they think God is a tyrant. The God of the Bible, they think is a tyrant. And I this last week, man, I've seen several videos of atheists saying, I don't believe the God of the Bible exists because, man, it would be horrible if he did. It's like, dude, that's not a good reason to believe, because that's not how truth works. Here's Richard Dawkins again. Here's what he says. There's a guy, Jewish guy named Ben Stein, who made a documentary, and he is interviewing Richard Dawkins. Listen to what Dawkins says.
The Hebrew God, the God of the Old Testament, he doesn't exist in your view.
Certainly, I mean, that would be a very unpleasant prospect.
Okay, I know that was kind of quiet. Did you guys hear what he said?
Unpleasant prospect.
Yes. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other reasons why Dawkins doesn't believe. To be fair to him, that's not the only reason he doesn't believe that God exists. But did you catch what he said? Ben Stein, huh? Okay, Ben Stein said the God of the Bible doesn't exist in your view. And he said, no, that would be a really unpleasant prospect. Okay? Which, again, to be fair to him, he does at times give other arguments as well. But, I mean, think about it, guys. If you're on the plains of Africa and there's a pack of hyenas running after you, you don't just stick your head in the dirt like an ostrich and be like, well, I don't believe that there's a pack of hyenas after me, because if it were, it would have really negative impacts on my life. Okay? So here's one really quick. This is Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. They both play detectives, and they're at like a tent revival, like a church revival meeting, doing some detective work, trying to find a couple possible suspects. And Woody Harrelson's character plays a detective who he believes that God exists, but he's definitely not like a Christian. He maybe even would claim to be, but he certainly doesn't live like one. But he believes that God exists, and he thinks it's good that people believe God exists, because think of how bad they would act if they didn't have religion. Okay? Matthew McConaughey's character plays an atheist. Okay, so listen to their conversation. It's short, but listen closely.
Some folks enjoy community, common good.
Yeah, well, it's common good's got to make up fairy tales, and it's not good for anybody.
Your sorrows pin you to this place. They divide you from what your heart knows. And there are a lot of good hearts out there. I'm looking out there, I'm seeing a lot of good hearts out there. I see a lot of good out there.
I mean, can you imagine if people didn't believe or things they get up to?
Exact same thing they do now, just out in the open.
Okay, did you catch what Woody Harrelson's character says? Can you imagine if people didn't believe that God existed, all the bad things that they do? Well, is that true? Yeah, most likely. If no one believed in God, there is amongst many people, not always, because you can kind of use the reverse, because a lot of people have done a lot of evil in the name of God, right? God told me to do this. But the important point that he's making is, hey, if people didn't believe, they'd do so much evil, so much more. Okay, but is that a good reason to try to get someone to believe that God exists? No. Okay, you have to actually use a good argument. Not, well, if they didn't, it would be worse. Like they would do bad stuff. Okay? Alright, let's finish with this. Last one, we're going quick. Argument from personal incredulity. Okay, this is where you claim that your opponent's argument has to be false because, well, you just don't understand their argument, or you don't see how it could be true. Okay, does that make sense? So you're basically saying, dude, your argument, I don't believe it. Maybe it's because you can't follow maybe the technicalities of the argument, or maybe you don't understand the argument, so, well, it has to be false. So here's an example for you guys if you want to look on the screen. Let's say an atheist says this. Well, I don't see how, that's one of the ways you can detect this logical fallacy. Well, I don't see how a good, loving, all-powerful God would allow all of the evil or pain and suffering in the world. Therefore, I don't believe God exists. I heard a few atheists say this week. Okay? What's the problem there? Peter, what's the problem?
The problem is that they're basically minimizing your argument simply because they don't understand it.
Right. Okay, just because you don't understand how God could be good while at the same time allowing pain and suffering in the world, that has nothing to do with whether or not God exists, right? Right?
Right.
So just because you can't understand how God could be good while allowing this, that has no bearing on whether that claim that God exists is true or not. Okay? Yeah.
So, I was thinking about my uncle, this is really weird thing he goes on like these weird like spiritual journeys. And right now he doesn't think that Jesus is God because he quote unquote told me and my sister, it doesn't make sense to me, so I don't believe it.
Okay? Alright?
Don't be like my uncle.
Yeah, so think about it, guys. What if, let's say 500 years ago, let's say we lived 500 years ago and I said, well, guys, you come and tell me your belief, your claim for how the earth is moving through space. And I say, well, I don't see how planet Earth could be flying through space and spinning at this speed so fast without all of us flying off the earth. So therefore, it must not work that way. What's the problem? I'm saying it can't work this way. Why? What's my whole reason? Because I don't see how it could. But that's not a good argument for not believing something. Okay? You have to have a better argument. Now, is it okay to say, I don't understand how this could be the case?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Is it okay to say, well, this doesn't really make sense to me? Yeah, sure. Okay? It becomes a logical fallacy where you say it must be false because I don't understand it. Okay, does that make sense? So it's okay to say, yeah, I don't really get how this works, and I'm going to see if there's evidence against it. That's okay. But where it becomes a logical fallacy is where you say, because I can't understand it, therefore it must be false. Okay? So this, you guys know who Stephen Fry is? He is a Hollywood actor, British guy, plays in The Hobbit, Robbie's favorite movies. And he's an atheist. So he's explaining to a guy, and I love the other guy's face at the end. He explains to this guy why he doesn't believe in God, God's existence. Ready? Listen.
Because the God who created this universe, if it was created by God, is quite clearly a maniac. Utter maniac. Totally selfish. We have to spend our life on our knees thanking him? What kind of God would do that? Yes, the world is very splendid, but it also has in it insects, whose whole life cycle is to burrow into the eyes of children and make them blind. They eat outwards from the eyes. And why? Why did you do that to us?
Okay. Okay, what's the issue here? What's the big issue here?
He's just reasoning with
Go ahead.
He's reasoning with ignorance.
Yeah.
Not understanding.
Yeah. How could God be good while allowing this? In essence, it's one of the problem of evil arguments. What purpose could this possibly have? Why would a good, loving God allow that? Okay, so there's actually several problems here, but that's one of the problems, is I don't believe because I don't see how God could be good while allowing this. But again, just because you don't understand that, I mean, think about how many things we don't understand. He also misunderstands a core tenet of Christianity, which is that the world we live in today, with the pain and suffering that exists, that's not how God originally created the world, right? That's what so many atheists don't get, and sadly, there's not a lot of Christians I've seen lately that actually present that point. We don't believe the world has always been this way, okay? And so God created it good. Who was it that ruined it? Man, when he chose to sin, okay? And that's what ruined the world. Here's another example. Someone says, oh, I don't see how all the different races on earth could have come from just two people, Adam and Eve. It doesn't make any sense to me, so I have to reject it. Okay? Same issue there. Here's one that a lot of Christians I hear commit. You ready for this? Yeah. I'm experiencing a lot of spiritual warfare right now. I'm supposed to go on this mission trip in a week, and my new passport still hasn't arrived yet, and I just got sick too. I can't think of any other reason these things could be happening to me. It must be the devil attacking me. Okay? Is that the only possibility? No, of course not. Right? But here's what a lot of Christians do. And you lose credibility when you do this. When you hyper-spiritualize things and make every single thing that doesn't go your way spiritual warfare, you lose credibility. Okay? Here's the thing. Let's just take this scenario. Let me mention a couple of the other possible things it could be in this scenario. Maybe your passport hasn't arrived yet because you procrastinated and you didn't get it when you should have, and you took too long. And so you don't get to blame the devil for your own mistakes. Okay? Another possibility. Hey, well, guys, part of living in South Florida especially is sometimes passports just take a long time to arrive. How many guys have experienced that? Every single mission trip, it seems like we do. It's like, that happens. Happened with Abby's passport a couple years ago. And I don't think it was because she procrastinated, but I can't say for sure. But that happens, guys. Sometimes it just takes a while to arrive. Now, you getting sick. Could Satan possibly be the one causing you to get sick? Sure. But it's also possible that because you live in a fallen world, people do just get sick as part of living in a fallen world. It doesn't have to be that Satan is hovering over your bed all the time and making you get sick each time you get sick. Okay? Now, is spiritual warfare real?
Yes.
100%. Absolutely. Okay? But that doesn't mean, listen, that everything that I'm experiencing that I don't like is therefore the devil attacking me. Okay? Look at this scenario. Let me mention another possibility. What if it's the Lord who's causing your passport not to show up yet? Because he's using this to test your faith, to see if you're going to trust him rather than rely on other things. Think about that. Very often, God will put us in adverse circumstances that we don't like. He will sometimes be the one that allows it. Other times, he will be the one orchestrating certain trials in our life, and we see this throughout Scripture because maybe he wants to show us some sin that's in our heart. Maybe it's because he wants to change us. Maybe he wants to grow our faith and help us to trust him. And the lesson is this, guys. You've got to be really careful about attributing every circumstance that you don't like to the devil and every circumstance that you do like to God. Okay, I've seen some Christians be way too quick to credit a certain situation to Satan's attacks when really it's very possible and probable that it could be God the one working. So think of how serious that is. Let's say God is the one who orchestrates some trial in your life to work, and if you don't believe God ever does that, then you don't know your Bible well enough. Read Deuteronomy 8. God straight up says that he caused the Israelites to be hungry in the wilderness. He caused them to suffer hunger. Satan wasn't the one, God's the one who did it. And God takes ownership. And God says, I did this. I put these different trials in your path in the wilderness to test you, to learn that man shall not live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So there are times when God is the one who does things, but think about it. If you are so quick and you just say it's Satan, think about how serious that is. God is working in your life for your good and you're calling it Satan? Do you think God takes that seriously? For sure. So you got to be really careful about, hey, anytime something happens that I don't like, Satan. Okay? And anytime something good happens, or something that you like, doesn't mean it's God. Well, I got to date this person, it all worked out. Well, what if that person's actually no good? Like they're up to some really bad stuff, and you should not be dating this non-believer. Just because it worked out doesn't mean it's from God. Okay? Yeah.
How should we know if it's God telling you not to do something and trying to prevent you from it, or trying to see if you're returning to the God?
That's such a good question, and that's going to take a really long answer. So, at the end, I'm happy to answer it. But, a few things. Seek the Lord. Obviously, pray. Study His Word. Don't twist His Word to make it fit what you want it to mean for your circumstance. Proverbs 11:14 says, in the multitude of counselors there is safety. So, go to several other wiser, wise believers that love the Lord, who won't be yes men, but will counsel you according to God's word. Doesn't mean they'll always be right, but in the multitude of counselors is safety, right? So, and I'll give you a few more afterward. Yeah, that's a super good question, though. So we'll close with these last couple videos. Here you go. So this is, how many of you guys ever seen The Princess Bride? Okay, here you go. So they're cutting the rope, trying to make this guy fall off the cliff. Okay, so just because something is inconceivable doesn't mean it's not true. So in this scenario, is there a scenario where a person's climbing up a rope, the rope gets cut, and the person doesn't fall? Yes, like this, the guy grabbed onto the cliff. But this guy couldn't conceive of how that could have been true, so that doesn't make it false, okay? We'll skip this one for now. All right. This is Michael Knowles again. This is a man who has gotten surgeries and is trying to be a woman, okay?
The trans identity, because you are sitting here spewing something to me that doesn't really
I'm not
make
spewing
sense.
anything. I'm just stating facts.
I have lived experience. You don't, and you never will. But I do have a
I
question.
have lived experience.
What if one of your
I'm
trans,
fine.
what if one of your kids came out as trans? How would you
God
react to
forbid.
that?
I mean, I would obviously love my children, and I would
Okay.
try to do what's best for my children. And the best thing that I could do to be respectful and also to be conducive to their flourishing is to tell them the truth, which is that they're not really girls.
Oh, come on. I can't even imagine your relationship with your children. No shade.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, do you guys see the issue at the end? So, really, when you think about it, the message here is your relationship with your children must be bad, because I don't see how it could be good, because you're not accepting my worldview. Okay? So, how about this? Have you guys ever heard some Christians that either they don't believe that hell exists, or they don't believe that hell is eternal? Okay? So maybe we'll do this one next week. Yeah, we'll talk about this guy next week. So we'll finish there, because this will take a few minutes. But this guy, there's this guy, George Janko, and a Christian doctor and politician named Ben Carson. He's interviewing him. And the two of them are talking they get on to the topic of hell, and both of them don't believe, they either don't believe that hell exists or they don't believe hell's eternal. Okay? And so they both start discussing about, how could a loving God, I don't see how a loving God could allow someone to go to hell. And so basically, because they can't understand it and they ignore what Scripture says, therefore they don't believe it. Okay, so we'll maybe get into this one more next week. But stuff to think about. So, what are the 5 fallacies? Alicia, tell us one of them.
No.
Man. Ellie, tell us one of them.
Sarah, raise your hand. You should ask her.
I didn't see Sarah raise her
She
hand.
went
Priscilla.
like this. Appeal to pity, argument.
Okay, appeal to pity. Vaughn. What? Was Eric taking notes? Well done.
Argument of age.
Yes, yes. Argument because of age. No, you're cheating off of someone else's notes. That's cheating. Malika.
Argument to the people.
Wait, did you just cheat off of someone else's notes?
They're my notes.
Oh, good. Okay. Nice. I didn't know if they were Ellis. All right. What else? Metu.
Elitism.
Elitism, yeah, which is argument to the people. Okay, good. Okay, so the again, guys, remember the point of why we're studying this. You need to learn to detect them when other people make these fallacies, and you need to what? Guard against making them in your own arguments. Amen? Amen. All right, Gabe, you want to stop the recording? Let's pray.